Right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me introduce our guest. We'd like to welcome to this program Honorable Farouk Aliyu Adamu. He's a businessman and a former minority leader in the House of Representatives. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. Good evening.
Let me also welcome to this program Elder Simon Achuba. As a former deputy governor of Kogi State, he was also at one time deputy speaker of the Kogi State House of Assembly. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're also joined tonight by Professor Ken Ife, development economist. Prof, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us from our Lagos Network Center is Dr. Tunji Abayomi, constitutional lawyer. Dr. Abayomi, good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, and as you're aware, the program at some point gets interactive, and when we get to that point, we'll remind you of the process and the procedure. But let's go straight into the issues at stake as we begin to examine national development and the responsibilities of state governments. But first, let's start with you, Honorable Farouk Aliyu Adamu. Since democracy took roots in Nigeria, where would you say we are now in terms of the contribution of the states to national development?
Good evening, Nigeria. Sadly, I think it's not much to be desired, honestly. I mean, when you compare the contribution of the state towards the national development, you find out that the state governments across board try to leech on the federal government. Sometimes you wonder whether there is just one government in this country, which means the federal government, because everybody comes crying to federal government to assist and so on. You find out in some states, just like in your report, I know one particular state that are still paying 18,000 naira as a minimum wage. And from last year, from the time when subsidy was removed to date, the states have gotten about 45% increment in their revenues and so on. But whether on ground you could see these things, no, you don't. And probably everybody has to, take the blame. But the governors have to take responsibility for, what happens in the states. When you talk about like the security now, they always speak about the federal government is doing nothing, that they are left on their own and so on and so forth. But all the same, if the states could devolve, the monies they get, they could use it appropriately. Leadership by example, whereby state governors start even from the convoy of a governor, or appointments of, you see a governor appointing an assistant in every local government to do nothing, and so on. So these kind of things, don't say good of us as a country, as a people. So I think the states need to wake up to their responsibilities, to know that, look, when we say Nigeria, we do not mean just federal government. The states also have duty to the people. Recently, the federal government spoke about agriculture now. All the states are coming to federal level. Give us money to do agriculture in our states. As if they don't have Ministry of Agriculture or allocations for agriculture and so on. So if we need to, see development in this country, the states need to come forward. Recently, remember the Supreme Court gave judgment when the former president did the Naira change denomination. The Supreme Court gave a judgment that it was unconstitutional for the federal government to do what they did with the states, which means the states are an integral part of this country. The states also have a duty to the citizens to ensure that they are carried along, they spend the money, and the people see that monies are being spent. But if anything happens now, the governors will say federal government, federal government. So I think we also have to start holding governors accountable.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go over to Elder Simon Achuba, who would give us his opening comments on the issues at stake. Where is the position of the subnationals, the states, in terms of development? How well have they done since the return to democracy?
Well, thank you, and good evening, Nigerians. Well, so far, we started well in 1999 under the leadership of President Olusegun Obasanjo. Then governors' conduct and behavior were not the way it is now. And under the Obasanjo regime, he was very, very firm. And he never allowed governors to abuse the Constitution and get away with it. Every governor that misbehaved, he went after them to make sure that those conducts are not allowed. Gradually, along the line, the governors overwhelmed the presidents that comes in and threaten them, well, if you don't cooperate with us, you will not come back. So those were the political things that started coming in and aggravated state governors' conduct negatively. As a result, some governors misbehave and they get away with it. Take, for instance, a local government election is conducted. The local governments are supposed to do 3 years. Maybe in between, another governor, maybe from another party or in the same party comes in. They say the local government are dissolved just by announcement. And the local government chairmen and councillors, they will go to court and they will be in court for years on end, even after the tenure of that governor. But if there is a constitutional provision and a president who will not want the Constitution to be abused, look, a president called to a governor to say, look, what you are doing cannot be tolerated under my watch, under this government, speaks a lot. Secondly, as president continues to come on, they are not speaking to issues. A state governor will abuse the Constitution, do an unspeakable thing that has never been done before, and nobody, queries him, says anything about what he has done, and he gets away with it. Even when he is taken to the court, he finds his way around it and get out of it. And nothing happens. Because, to some extent, some judgment comes and says he has immunity. And this is where we need, as a nation, to reason together. Whether this immunity should cover all aspects of the life of the governor, or some aspect of the life of the governor. In this case, there is a need, I believe, to remove the immunity partially. Like when a governor abuses the Constitution, which he has taken an oath to defend, such governor should be called to it. And there should be an impeachment process other than the process as is provided for in the Constitution currently. That when a governor abuses the Constitution, the Attorney General of the Federation can present such abuse before the National Assembly. Those are the ways. If we have alternative to the process at the state, because most of the states now have been captured, the State Assembly has become a department of the State House of government houses. They are just a department. So to query a governor, to frown at the errors of the governor is no longer possible. And these governors, most of them, especially those who never occupied any political position before they were elected governors. You know, one thing about life and governance that we don't talk about is the power of praise, which in the political circle, people will refer to it as psychopathy. These people come to power, they don't know that there are praise singers on the corridor of power. They sing their praise to the extent that their head swells, and some of them see themselves as mini gods, where their words becomes law itself. And so a lot is going on which needs to be, adjusted. We need to make a change. Right. We really need to make a change.
All right, thank you so much. Professor Kenife, well, yes, yeah. a number of things are under the exclusive list, but there are others on the concurrent list. But it's become fashionable over the years, particularly during this democratic period from when Nigeria returned to democracy, to find that just about every facet of development is placed on the shoulders of the federal government. And in some cases, states have been accused of shirking their responsibilities, not taking on matters that are not on the exclusive list, and referring just about everything to the federal level and waiting for such to come from the center. How would you assess this over the years?
Federal government is such an object that everybody loves to hate. And it's so convenient for governors to blame it, to pile the blame on federal government. If you look at economic development and social development, even environment, they're all on the concurrent legislative list. And that means that federal government is an actor, state government is an actor, local government is an actor, and private sector is an actor. If you look at the medium-term development plan, National Development Plan, 2021 to 2025, the total budget, the expected money to be is 350 trillion naira. All levels of government, federal, state, and local government, are to contribute 50 trillion. Which is just, you can actually add it up from whatever you find in their budgets on capital, that you add them up, that's what it comes to. They expect private sector to find 298 trillion, almost 300. So you can see the whole government looking at punching at 15%, and they want private sector to do it. But where is the structure that enables all levels of government to leverage the contribution of the private sector? Now let's take them one by one. There is an area of that's natural mineral resources. Now, mineral resources, much of it can be found under the ground, apart from the aerospace and all this spectrum management and all of that. And that could be crude oil, that could be a solid mineral, but they're all held by federal government, anything under the ground. And then the state is anything above the ground. And that's where you come over to natural resources, which is agriculture and water resources. By the way, federal government should exit dams, because we have over 300 dams, and I don't know how many of them are yielding anything for us, not even aquaculture or even irrigation. So they should exit dams, because you've done the big strategic dams, over 300. And then you have this, what do you call the big? Yeah. Okay. Now, so that's just by the by. But so where you find that the leverage of the private sector could come, then you find these instruments very lacking in terms of willingness. You call it political will. I'm aware of several PPPs that have tried, which is the trending thing, that hit the rock just because of the demand that are placed on private sector that want to do their best. Okay. Now you come to another area, which is the social side. The key areas of social side is human capital development. Now that's hospital, that is health, that's education, and that is employment. Japan is the second biggest economy in the world, just before China. Now China is the second biggest, Japan is now number 3. But Japan didn't grow to that status from mineral resources or natural resources. It's human capacity, investment in human capacity, electronics, cars, and all of that. It's just that it is where they excelled, and that's how they became the 3rd biggest. And in fact, if you look at the 10 biggest economies in the world, none of them is actually based on oil and gas and all that. It is industrialization, by the way, investment in infrastructure. We have only 30% stock of infrastructure in Nigeria. South Africa has 80%. So you can see why sometimes I have sympathy for various governments that invest in infrastructure. My only challenge with those investments is that they borrow the money not for exactly for the purpose for which it is intended. And the law that requires you to do what is right is Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. And unfortunately, that anything borrowing is on the exclusive legislative list. So you have to understand that some governors that may have brilliant ideas, if they don't have IGR, like Lagos has, or even Port Harcourt or something, Rivers or something, if they don't have enough IGR, they can live with their dreams. Federal government can dream for 43 years for infrastructure projects 2043. They can have their 2050 agenda. They will have our 20. States can only do like one year budget, 1 month. They collect money in. You can't plan long term with short term revenue. But for you to access foreign resources and borrow from outside or whatever, you need to join the FRA. You have to adopt and domesticate FRA 2007 in your state. And then you have to set up the institutional framework, which is the FRC, to actually govern it. When it was set up in 2007, it was left voluntary. And 90% of all the countries in the world that have actually adopted that fiscal law made it mandatory within a year. Now, only 25 states have adopted this. And of the 25 states that adopted it, not all of them have actually built this institutional framework for delivering. So when you want to borrow money, go and look at the shopping list. Has your local assembly approved? What is your FAC? Let's see what headway you have in terms of headway. So all of those, it constrains the people that what they want to achieve economically. So you have to have enough IGR and be more creative in your account, because you can't go and borrow money. All the governors that go and have bank, bank advances or bank overdraft are illegal. Anything borrowing has to be approved by federal government. It doesn't have to be external borrowing. Anything borrowing, because when you come, the law says you can only borrow for capital expenditure or human resource development. And we know that to be health, education, and employment. And then it says you can only have that based on a cost-benefit analysis. We haven't been doing that. We've been borrowing with, we promissory notes. We will promise to pay you over 5 years, and then we'll just spend and spend and spend, and then you run into others. So there are constraints. But there are also opportunities. There are states that have managed to wriggle out and have a clear development pathway, releasing a lot of revenue. We know that for Lagos, for example. And then you go and see some developments in Akwa Ibom, gone into airline, they're doing business, build nice stadium, doing roads. You go to Abakaliki, you saw where they used concrete, you build their own. So there are some green shoots. It's not all bad news for all the states. But the local governments are decimated completely. You can't see the light for the local governments. They're all stampeded by state governments. And I think we need to look into the constitutional position of local, how to enforce their 20% money that they get. And they should do a lot more for that. Apart from basic education, which is in their domain, they can do a lot more, especially in the area of agriculture.
Speaking of which, it's the right time to bring in Dr. Tunji Abayomi, who is with us from our Lagos Network Center. Well, Dr. Abayomi, you heard Professor Kenny Faye's last comments about what should be done, especially as it relates to constitutional provisions. But let's hear you, the topic of the day, and see how you bring in this aspect of it.
The nation is actually facing tremendous challenges. And in my view, our nation needs to have a very serious conversation about its future. The poor performance of the governments of the several states typifies the problems our nation faces. If today you go around the states and you do an assessment, talking to the people, if we are lucky, we'll find maybe 3 states, if not less, that will be rated as performing by the peoples of Nigeria. The question is, why is performance so low in our country? The same perception of the people of the federal government with regard to the several states, the perception is even considerably worse. In my view, Professor, as well as one of the speakers who said things have to change, typifies the challenge that the nation faces. I will call it the somber challenge. We cannot have a federation, in my view, where 52% of the wealth of the nation goes to only one government. And that is the federal government, when the remaining 37 really, if we include Federal Capital Territory, share 26%, and then the local government manage 22. Even if we combine the 22 and the 26, we say have only 48. Something needs to be done, and done fast. Because I'm 74 now, and I have been active in the struggle for better Nigeria for the last 40 years. I've gone to detention, jail 3 times, one for 1 year, the 3rd one in just prison. And I'm a little bit concerned, worried about this, our nation. Because if we look at the situation of the nation since independence, since 1999, democracy, it looks like things are getting worse and worse and worse. One of the speakers spoke about that the government was somewhat better under Obasanjo, and the governors behaved properly. But things have deteriorated to the point that everybody in this country today is worried. If we don't have any concern, the simple concern about the tragedy of the nation, a nation that produces petroleum, is facing one of the most difficult challenges with relating to petroleum. And you go, a nation that has such vast land, scarcely able to feed its citizens. And you can go on and on and on. I think the challenge of the nation is to look deeply into its foundation of its government. I do not think the structure of government as we have it now will gain advantage for the people of Nigeria. As at today, if we must face this nation truthfully, it is very clear that we have a situation where maybe 4% of the nation have so much, too much as a matter of fact, and about 96% live in penury. If we have a government where leaders of government, like the Accountant General of the nation, or like a minister like Desiani, or like the man pension, can take billions where leadership is not regulated or controlled, then we need to have a serious and deep conversation about our nation. So, the states are performing very poorly, but they will tell you that to whom much is given, much is expected. But since so little is given to them, little should be expected. As to the federal government to whom much is given, well, that is left for the judgment of history. But in my view, our nation, this Nigerian nation, has a great possibility to which the whole world of black people look at, needs to have a deep conversation about its foundation, the structure of government. Why are things not working continually in our nation?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tueaday. Well,